Hey everyone, welcome. It's Tristan Roberts. This is our A plus session here, and I'm actually doing a 1001 recap. Just took the exam last Friday, so I'm gonna do my best to give you all an idea of what to expect when preparing. Excuse me, when preparing for this exam. So, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them, but we'll kind of get into it. So first and foremost, this exam here, if you haven't passed the first exam, the 901, if you're still working on the 900 series, I would leave it alone. Just kind of put it in the back of your mind. Ironically, preparing for the 901 isn't much different at all than preparing for the 1001. The objectives are pretty much identical, with the main difference being virtualization and cloud computing. Okay, this is a section that they brought over from the second exam on the last series. So this section was actually covered on the 902. But when they updated the exams, they moved this over, okay, along with the troubleshooting steps, which I'll show you in a bit, because that definitely came up on the exam. Okay. So for me, this wasn't my first time taking A plus. Obviously, I've been A plus certified since 2014. Okay, so some of the base knowledge I already had. There was a lot of stuff that I'm glad that I recapped before I sat and took this exam, because if this is something that you're not doing every day, it can be easy to forget and kind of data dump some of the stuff that you're not seeing on a day-to-day basis. So that's another thing that's important. Once you get certified, make sure you do what you can to keep your knowledge current, because things are always changing. I think we all know that. Things are always changing. The core of these exams is pretty much intact. It's going to be the same. There's a lot of concepts that haven't changed in the last 3 years, but the main thing is just kind of spotting, what did they add, what did they take out, what's relevant now that wasn't relevant before. That's the type of stuff that you're looking for when you're changing exams. So with that said, this exam, it wasn't too difficult, it wasn't too easy. It really just it depends on your interpretation skills. If you do your homework and you know your stuff, there's a chance that this exam is going to be easy, as long as you can interpret what they're asking, as long as you understand what it is that they're asking. Sometimes it's not that easy, and that's another thing I'll bring up in a bit. Okay, so for me, 78 questions. They gave me 78 questions, not too many. 90 minutes, obviously, I don't have any accommodations, so I have an hour and a half, and I used almost all of it. But I went through the exam twice, so that's why. 12 months experience as an IT support specialist. Obviously, I have this, right? So this exam is more geared towards people like me that have been in the field. If you haven't been in the field, you want to find a way to supplement this. Find a way to get some experience and practice. Okay, I can't stress the importance of that, because there's a lot of scenarios that you get thrown in during the exam, and it's a lot easier to deal with those scenarios if you've experienced something like that before. Okay, so moving on down. Okay, we talked a little bit about these. Virtualization and cloud computing. I didn't see much. I saw a few questions, okay, but which is pretty indicative of this right here, right? It's telling you that you're only going to see 12%, which was, is about right. So, all right. So my exam consisted of, I want to say, 3 performance-based questions. There was really 4. Okay, they had me do a few things. And one of them was a matching question. Okay, so there were 3 questions where they asked me to actually do something, All right. So the fact that we're recording, I don't want to go into any specifics, but I'll give you an idea of the things that I saw and what you should be prepared for. Okay. And then the other one was it was just a matching question, so a drag and drop. Okay. The rest of the exam was multiple choice, which everyone, if you've taken any of these exams, you should probably expect by now. First few will be performance based, they call them, and then the rest will be multiple choice. Okay. So once I got into the multiple choice portion of the exam, which is where I like to build my momentum, I always skip the performance-based questions at the beginning. I always leave them for the end. Okay, I don't want to waste time doing those because for the most part, you're going to get close to about a minute per question. If you get 90, didn't get quite 90, so it gave me a little bit of extra time, but I don't want to waste too much time on the first few questions, so I always flag them and I come back at the end once I've gained my momentum in the multiple choice section. Okay, it's just a personal preference for me. I know some other students and other people that have done that. I know some people that just answer the questions as they come. So it's just a personal thing, but that's just me. Okay. So this is what I noticed. All right. And I hope everyone is paying attention and, write it down, take notes, whatever, or just watch it again. But here's the thing that I noticed, all right? A lot of the questions is not really clear. It's, even though there's a correct answer, a lot of the times it's not always clear, all right? They leave it up to interpretation, and you have to make sure that you're doing your best to pick out the one that they want you to pick, okay? I give you an example. They'll give you a question where you're troubleshooting something, and 3 of the answers are all possible solutions, right? And what you have to do now is you have to figure out by wording which one they want you to choose. And what I mean by wording is a lot of the time something that I noticed, okay, is keyword, right? We talked about that a lot. If anyone's been to any of these sessions lately, we've been talking about keywords and key phrases, right? Keyword being, an example being next or first or best, okay? I saw that a lot on this exam, and I'm glad that I did, because a lot of the times, when they're asking you what should you try first, it gives you an indication that you're at the beginning of the troubleshooting process, and then that kind of gives you an idea, okay, out of these 3 that it could be, right, which one would I more than likely try first, right? Or another one is best, right? And one thing that I noticed is that they did caps it, okay? So it was all caps. Every time there was a keyword like next, first, or best, it was always all caps. So it should be easy to spot, but you have to make sure that you spot it. Otherwise, it'll be real easy to miss a lot of those troubleshooting questions, because they're giving you multiple solutions that could all work, but they're telling you which one to pick by giving you that keyword. Okay, so if you do not pay attention to it, you can easily pick the wrong one. Okay, example being, you're having a problem with your router. Okay, what should you do? Should you should you restart the router? Should you unplug it? Should you hard reset it? Should you go buy another router? Right? So it's all 4 things that people do, but the answer is going to be given by which one should you in this instance, which one should you try first, right? Or it should be or it could be that you tried something already, what should you try next? Or it could be you tried everything, right? What's next now? So you have to pay very close attention, or when you get down to this troubleshooting section, you're going to have problems, okay? It's something that I had to do because by nature, I'm a skimmer. I don't like to read every word. So I have to force myself to do it when I'm taking these exams, because it'll be real easy for me to miss something and, and miss a question that I should get right just because I wasn't paying close enough attention, okay? So that's something that I want to make sure everyone pays close attention to before you sit down, not just for this exam, Okay, I saw it a lot on this exam for all of these exams. If it's a CompTIA exam, pay close attention to the keywords because you're going to see a lot of troubleshooting questions that give you a lot of answers that could technically be right depending on the situation. And you need to know which one it's going to be. The only giveaway that they give you for that, the only clue is it's going to be in the question. Okay, so just make sure you practice finding that. Right. Okay, so mobile devices. I saw some stuff on mobile devices. Okay, if you've owned a phone in the last 10 years, you shouldn't really struggle too hard in this area. Okay, there's not a lot of it here compared to some other areas, but it's a decent amount to where you want to make sure you do your homework. Okay, the technologies, peripherals, things like that. These tethering versus NFC versus IR versus high spot. Make sure that you understand these technologies and you know the characteristics of them. And the questions that you see should be all right. Okay. If you run into acronyms that you don't know, something like this maybe, make sure that you know what it is. Make sure you study the technology and the characteristics. So if you see it on the exam, you can either know that that's an answer, or you can put it with the process of elimination. Okay. Me personally, I saw 3 main types of questions. Okay. There were questions where I knew the answer without a doubt. Okay. And there were other questions where I didn't necessarily know the answer, but I knew it wasn't any of the other ones. Right. So process of elimination. Okay. And then there were questions where, it was like the ones I was just describing, right? There's a few, it could be this, it could be that, it could be this, just depending on the question. Okay. So, and then there's going to be questions where you have no clue, right? So there's like four main types of questions. The ones where you have no clue, don't stress on it. More than likely, it's just something that they threw in there to kind of throw you off. Don't let it throw you off, right? Just, flag it, pick your best educated guess, and then come back to it at the end if you have time. That's my recommendation for that. Matthew, yeah. Next best. You'll see something. It'll give you a clue, right? It'll say first. It'll say next. It'll say best. Next best, not really, because that kind of, it gives sort of an indication of not the best, but the next best, right? So you'll either see next or you'll see best, but you won't see next best, if that makes sense. That's even more confusing. Because then it's like, okay, do you want the best or do you want the next best, right? So I find myself staring at a lot of questions, seriously, staring at the answers. And I did something this exam that I don't normally do. When I went through the second time, first of all, I flagged more questions that I really would like to. Normally, I end up flagging like 3 or 4. I probably flagged like around 8 or 9 questions this time. And it's just because I didn't want to sit there and try to, try to figure them out. I'd rather just come back to them when the rest of the exam is done. But, I flagged more questions than normal, and I actually changed more than I normally would too. Most of the time when I'm going through the exam the second time, the only time I'll change the answer is, if I'm 100% sure that it needs to be changed. Other than that, I'll just go with my gut. But this time, I changed probably, out of the 8 that I flagged, I've changed close to 4 of them, 3 or 4 of them, which is kind of, it's kind of different for me. But, this time I didn't have as much time to prepare as I did before. So, there was a lot of, I was kind of just relying on my knowledge to get me through this one. And, luckily I made it. So, okay. Dan says you took the 902 and passed. Okay. Nice. Congrats. You think the 901 was harder? Well, yeah. That's subjective. again, Dan, that really just depends on your prior knowledge. There's a lot of people that they've been building PCs for a long time, and to those people, the first exam is always the easiest because they're used to the hardware and the components. Is something they've been doing for a while, right? And so that's another thing that's subjective. If anyone asks me which one is harder, I'm going to tell you it depends on what you already know. On your, if you're just coming into the field, then they're both going to be equally as difficult. If you have prior experience building PCs, then the first exam is going to be. If you have more experience with operating systems, maybe virtual machines and software troubleshooting and security and things like that. Well, in that case, the second exam is going to be easier. So you're just going to be more comfortable taking that exam. So, all right, okay. The networking that I saw on the exam is basic, right? It's like I said before. I didn't see much on ports. There were a couple of questions, so just make sure that you know these, which ports are doing what, which ones are associated with what. Understand the difference between TCP and UDP. You'll be fine. They don't throw too many of these at you. Make sure you know the characteristics of routers, switches, managed and unmanaged, obviously, firewalls, repeaters. Make sure you know what all of these do, the strengths and the weaknesses of each one. You'll be fine. They don't go too much into detail. Like I said, this isn't a networking exam, so it's just basic stuff. This is your introduction to it. Okay. Make sure you do your homework on these. What frequencies these are operating at. The speeds. Obviously, you want to know the speeds. Okay. Let's see what else. Definitely make sure you know the server roles. I saw quite a few questions on these, and they didn't really, they weren't being upfront about it. What they were doing is they were saying, there's a problem. These were like these were being presented in troubleshooting scenarios. Okay, there was a problem with something that were giving you the symptoms, and you have to figure out, which one is having the problem. Okay, so make sure you do your homework on these. What each of these, what the uses for each of these are. Okay. Same with these over here. Make sure you know what all these are. I didn't see anything on subnet mask. Doesn't mean don't prepare for it because it's here. But the subnet masks here are gonna be the simple ones. Okay, like the classical ones. Don't worry about CIDR, right? Don't worry about variable length subnet masking. That's a networking thing, right? Just make sure you can identify your basic subnet mask. So your class A, your class B, your class C. If you can do that, you should be fine. All right. Let's see what else. Hardware is probably going to be your biggest area. Okay. I saw quite a few questions on hardware. Obviously, your connector types, all this stuff is important, okay? Your RAM types, make sure you understand the difference between all of these, right? Make sure you understand the difference between all of these speeds and all of that, because they're going to test you on it. You may not see a lot, but they're going to test you on it, okay? Common connector types, yeah, make sure you do your homework on these, because you're going to see them. All of this stuff, really, you just want to make sure that you pay close attention to what you need to know about all this stuff. Okay, if you do your homework, I'm not guaranteeing that the exam is going to be easy. I'm just going to say that you'll feel a little bit more comfortable if you really understand this stuff versus just, scratching the surface. Okay. This one right here, this is one of my performance-based questions. Okay. They gave me a couple of these. I'm not going to tell you which ones they gave me, but what I'm going to tell you is just make sure that what I'm going to tell you is they gave me multiple ones, and you just need to know what needs to go to each PC. Okay, if you can do that, you should be all right. Then they're not trying to trick you here. It's just, they give you a couple of PCs and they say, hey, look, this is what we want over here. This is what we want over here. Here are the components. Put them where they go. Okay. So, yeah, no worries, Latoya. I will. Thanks for leaving that. I'll make sure that you get credit for attending. Okay. Okay. So here, you can see here. Obviously, there's not much here. What I will say is I did get a few questions on this. Okay, so anticipated. This is really about characteristics. Okay, if you know the characteristics of all of this stuff, you should be fine. There's no, this isn't like a troubleshooting scenario type of thing. They're going to give you a definition and ask you to identify it. Okay, so make sure that you know what all of this stuff is, right? Meters, measured servers versus metered. Obviously, infrastructure, software, and platform as a software. As a service. Make sure you know the characteristics of each of these. It can be a little confusing at first, but Jason does a good job of explaining these. So does Professor Messer, and I'm pretty sure Mike Myers and whoever else does training for this stuff. So just make sure that you can put all these in a category. You should be fine when it comes to virtualization. Again, I saw probably 3 questions at the most. Okay, so and that includes this down here. So, just do your homework and you should be fine here. This is the area that's probably going to give people the most problems, and I told you why already, because what they do is, obviously, for one, you have to know these steps, be able to put these steps in order, okay? Once you can put these steps in order, that's kind of half the battle. Then it's just kind of identifying where you are in the process, because sometimes they're going to put you at the beginning, and the key word that you're at the beginning is going to be first, obviously, right? If you see something that says, what would you try first, or something like that, more than likely you're at the beginning of the process, right? If they say next, it doesn't mean that you're not at the beginning, but it just means that there's a chance that you might not be at the beginning. If they say next, you could be somewhere over here. Okay, so just make sure that you know what comes next in troubleshooting, because you're going to have to apply that in all of these scenarios down here that they give you. It's not just about knowing the troubleshooting order. You have to try to put yourself in the scenario, and that's the best advice I could give you. When I was taking the exam, I was just trying to think, all right, what would I do if I was the network administrator and this is a problem, right? You have multiple end users calling in, and they're telling you that they can't reach the internet, right? What do you try first? What would I do in that instance, right? Or you have a couple PCs that have intermittent connectivity, right? Like this one right here, intermittent device failure, right? Well, what would I do in an instance like this, right? You have to keep in mind that you're answering questions from a CompTIA perspective, but it also helps to put your own perspective in there as well to see if they match up or not. Okay, this is the best advice I can give you. If you're at the beginning of the process, okay, look for the simplest solution. I don't care if it's push the power button. All right, check the cabling. All right, move if it's power down the system, right? Power cycle the system, right? Look for the easiest solution, because when you're troubleshooting, that's what you're always looking for. You're going from easiest to worst case, right? In that order. So anytime you see first or anything that gives you an indication that you're just getting started, maybe you're just gathering the information, that's when you want to you want to look for the simplest solutions, okay? Because I know a lot of the times what we do is we'll see like a simple solution, something that says, check the power or look on the device and see if the power light is on, right? And we want to set it to the side because we're thinking, well, it can't be that easy, and sometimes it is, okay? Especially when you're at the beginning, you want to look for stuff like that, okay? If they say next, you're in the middle somewhere for the most part, and then it's just about determining what have you done already. You have to go back to the question to figure out, okay, what have I tried, right? So in this scenario where we have multiple users that are saying that they can't connect to the internet, right? Maybe the first thing you would do is try to connect yourself, see if you can reach the internet. And if you can't, what do you do after that, right? If we're talking about first, maybe in this instance, we're pinging the gateway, right, to make sure that the gateway is fine. Because when you're talking about multiple users, and in that instance, you probably want to see if the gateway is the problem, right? But that could also say that you've already pinged the gateway and the gateway is fine, right? So now, what do you do now, right? That's when you take ping out of the equation, at least the gateway. Maybe there's a site that you want to ping, right? Maybe, ping Google server or something like that is next. See, since we know that our access point is good, let's see if, where the problem is arising, right? So let's see if we can get to another device that should be up for sure, right? Start looking outside the network. And then once you get past ping, then you start looking at trace route and things like that, right? So it's about understanding, where you are and knowing what you tried, and then you can eliminate stuff then, right? Normally when there's a next, there's stuff that you can eliminate. And even if it's a first, like if you're just getting started, obviously you want to eliminate like the what do you call it? The worst case stuff, right? So that's the replace, right? You don't want to replace something when you haven't done any troubleshooting yet, right? I'm not going to replace my screen just because it's dim when I turn it on, right? I'm going to try a few things, right? I'm going to try the brightness button first, right? If that doesn't work, then, you start looking at the cabling and things like that. So just keep in mind it's a process, and they give you an idea of where you are, but you have to be able to spot it, one, and also you have to know the process well so you know where to go next when they put you in that scenario, okay? Any questions? In particular? We're almost at 40 minutes. So I want to make sure I give everyone a chance to answer or to ask any questions. If not, I'll just keep going. Okay. Just keep going. Okay. So, the main thing on this exam, read the questions, okay? I can't stress that enough. Read them. It's not that they're trying to trick you. It's just that it can seem tricky. if you don't know these steps well, then it can seem tricky because they give so many answers that could all be solutions. It just depends on where are you in the process. What if you tried already? What haven't you tried yet? What are the symptoms telling you, right? And then you just kind of go from there. So I saw quite a few of these, right? Given a scenario, troubleshoot problems related to motherboards. You're going to see it, okay? Look for it. Same thing here, hard drives. They're gonna give it to you, okay? So, just make sure you do your homework on this stuff, and then the more you know, the easier it is to eliminate stuff, right? To eliminate the answers that you're pretty sure it's not that yet, or I probably wouldn't be trying trace route before ping. I probably wouldn't, you probably want to replace the sound card without trying the volume buttons first, and things like that. So, they do give you answers that you can throw out as long as you kind of have an idea of where you are and what you would try first, and things like that. Okay. Troubleshooting is something you're going to see it. It's kind of a pain. Like I said, there were multiple times where I was just like, okay, what are you getting at? Sometimes they're not really clear with the information that they're giving, and you have to try to interpret it. And I hate that. It's better. It's hard enough to pass these exams. It's hard enough just to get this knowledge. But when you're not clear about what they're asking you, it makes things kind of irritating, so to speak. So, but I will tell you this, okay? For as many of the questions that I was on the fence about, I probably had just as many that I was sure about, okay? And that kind of makes up for those, right? If you have questions where you're pretty sure, okay, oh yeah, that's in the people address, or oh yeah, the DNS server must be down, right? If they can't reach websites by typing in the name, okay, it's probably a DNS problem, right? If everyone that's using DHCP, or if everyone that's using DHCP is having problems, maybe there's a problem with the DHCP server, right? They ask you a question about a specific port number, right? If you're pretty sure you know what the port number is, there's always going to be a few of them. If you do your homework, you're going to know for sure. So just make sure that you get those, and that kind of gives you a little leeway on the ones that you end up having to guess on. Okay, I didn't get a perfect score by any means, but I got enough right so I felt comfortable before I ended the exam. I got enough questions to where I was sure I was picking the right answer. Okay, and that's what you want. No matter what happens, there's always going to be a few that you're just on the fence about, right? It could be this, it could be that. Maybe it could be all four of them sometimes. Okay, but like I said, there are going to be a few that are just give me's. If they give you the characteristics for software as a service and it's a give me, right? It's like a layup, right? If you know the difference between the public versus private, then you're good. So make sure you get those. The layups and the chip shot field goals, the free kicks, whatever you want to call it. I'm just using sports as an analogy right now. But the freebies, you have to get them. And, that way you have more room for error when you get the ones where it's like, okay, is it this one or this one? Which one? Okay. So overall, my take is that this exam is not much different than the 901. I mean, I saw questions on the 1001 that I'm pretty sure I saw on the 801. Okay, back in 2013-14. Okay, so especially if you're talking about like port questions and things like that. I mean, these haven't changed, right? Your common port numbers and things, they haven't changed. The characteristics of your routers versus switches, and a lot of this stuff, it hasn't changed, especially networking hardware. So it can be. Sorry, I just heard my door open, which is weird. Give me a second. Okay, sorry about that. That's what happens when you have kids at home when you're working. Okay. So yeah, I forgot where I was, but the main take is just do your best to do your homework on this stuff, and you should be all right. The 901 and the 1001, there's not much difference. The main thing is just this right here, like I said. Okay. All of these other areas are all covered on the 901. So studying for the 901 is essentially studying for the 1001. So like I said before, my advice, if you have not passed the 901 yet, I wouldn't take it. You only have a month left, before the 900 series is gone, and you don't want to get caught in the middle. So if you do have 901 already, I would do, the clock is ticking. So, just do whatever you can to make sure you knock out the 902 so you can avoid having to start over, because that's not something anyone should be trying to do. Right? These exams are hard enough as it is without taking it twice. And that's basically what you'll be doing. If you pass the 901 and you're not able to get the 902 over, you're going to be taking the same exam over. Even though it has a different number on it, it's the same exam pretty much, with the exception of this. So, all right. Are there any questions in particular that anyone has while we're still on this topic?
I got a question.
Sure.
So I noticed on I think it was CertMaster, the test, it asks a lot with the port numbers, whether it's a TCP or UDP port. Is that super important to know?
Yes,
and yeah, okay.
Yes and no. It's more important moving forward. Okay, it's more important on Net Plus than it is here. Okay, what I want to tell you is don't neglect it. It's more important that you understand the difference between TCP and UDP for this exam. Okay. My experience personally, I didn't get any questions that asked me, is FTP using TCP or UDP, right? Is Secure Shell using TCP or UDP, all right? Now, this is my exam, so just keep that in mind. Not everyone's going to get the same version of the exam that I got, okay? And that's a really good question because it is here. Since it's here, you want to make sure that you understand the difference between them. And once you get these down, once you get all these common ports down, if you can match up a port with a protocol, or port number with a protocol, my next step would be here, trying to figure out which ones are using TCP and UDP, okay? But like I said, I didn't get any questions, not that I can remember, not off the top of my head. I didn't get any that were asking me specifically, which ones are using TCP and UDP, okay? I will tell you this. There's a lot more ports, there's a lot more protocols using TCP than UDP. So it's easier to key in on the ones that are using UDP when you want to start doing it. Okay?
Okay, thanks, man.
No problem. Anything else? Any other questions about what you're going to see on this exam? To me, there wasn't much difference between this exam and the 800 series. I was totally skipped the 900 series. I renewed my A+ cert through my Security Plus, actually through Net and my Security. So I didn't take the 900 series. But, at the same time, there's really not much difference there. To be honest, there's a lot of this stuff is the same stuff that was covered on that exam. So. Okay. All right, that's it for me. I don't really have anything else on this exam. It was nerve-wracking. Even with my prior experience, for some reason, like when I sit down and take these exams, I'm just kind of, I guess, I don't know, you have like butterflies or whatever, but it's more, I'm kind of irritated. I don't like the way that they word a lot of the questions. It's, in a field where, there's so many, when you're troubleshooting, there's really, there's so many possibilities. And, when you're giving a troubleshooting exam to people that are just coming to the field, it's kind of brutal, when you don't have that experience, because, I can imagine, a lot of people sitting there just staring like, what are they talking about? I can imagine that. I remember being that person. I speak the language a little bit better now because I've been in the field for a while, but it's just, it's kind of brutal with the troubleshooting stuff. Like the mobile devices and, networking, I'm kind of strong in networking. So like this basic stuff, it didn't bother me. It was, and the hardware, I had to do my homework again on this because there's so much here. But it was really this section here, the troubleshooting, that gave me the most headache, because I'm sitting here and I'm like, all right, it should be this, right? But I'm looking up and I'm like, okay, it could be this too. And there's nothing in there that really gives you a clear indicator. It's just kind of, okay, which one would you do? And then it's like, okay, what would I do, or what would CompTIA do? So in that instance, you have to default to CompTIA, okay? I know I mentioned to try your best to put yourself in a scenario, but you always have to remember you're taking a CompTIA exam, and that's something that I have to remember myself too, because there's a way I would do things, and then there's a way CompTIA would have you do it. And you have to kind of remind yourself that you're taking a CompTIA exam. So anyway, yeah, I mean, the rest of the stuff, it didn't really bother me that much. It was just this, because it's not clear. And if I'm taking an exam, I want to be clear. I want there should be a clear answer. And there's really not. There's a lot left to interpretation, even with the keywords, even with, next and first and all that. It gives you a good indicator. It does let you eliminate some things, but it's not always clear what the answer is. So that's what I don't like about these exams. Hopefully they change them, but that's the direction that they've been going since I was a student. Since I first started taking them, there was a lot less troubleshooting then. And since I've been certified, with each of the updates, you just start seeing more and more of it, more and more. And I mean, I can see why, because at the end of the day, that's what this field is about, right? It's about fixing problems. It's about troubleshooting and things like that. But it puts those of you that are beginners at a huge disadvantage when you don't have this, scroll up here, this experience right here, right? Because you're just guessing. A lot of those, you're kind of guessing. You may have an idea what it is, but it's hard to know. It's hard to explain. You'll see when you sit down and take the exam. You'll know what I'm talking about. It's just they leave a lot up to interpretation, and it kind of sucks, especially to have like such a big percentage that's keyed in on it. So my advice, do your homework. Hardware networking, hardware and network troubleshooting. These are going to be your main areas. And then obviously mobile devices. This you're not going to see much here. But. Okay. So we got a few people that are getting ready to cut out here. No worries. Any other questions about the exam? Anyone want to pick my brain about what I saw or what I used, what I did? My main resources were, the purpose of me taking this exam, actually, I really didn't want to take it, was one, I want to be able to identify with you guys that are going to be taking the exam. So you have to go in there and take it. Two, I wanted to test the resources that we're providing you guys to make sure that they're adequate, right? And from what I can tell, everything is good. So it's just really about, making sure that you put the time in, especially if you don't have experience. Just put the time into understanding the concepts and differences and things like that. And you should be fine taking this exam, all right? Like I said, it's not easy. It's not overwhelmingly hard. Most of us are going to fall somewhere in the middle. There's going to be questions that you're comfortable with, and then there's going to be ones that you're kind of scratching your head. But just make sure, and then there's going to be easy ones too. Make sure you knock out the easy ones. I can't stress that enough. And yeah, that's about it. And also make sure that you use the multiple testing engines. For the most part, I just used CertMaster. I didn't really go into Exam Compass and all that. I didn't have the time to. I would have if I did, but I kind of just went in and took this exam. So for the most part, I used CertMaster, Jason's course. I use Professor Messer's course as a secondary source, and that's pretty much it. I didn't really do too much else. So the resources we have should be good. No other questions I can see here. I'm just going through looking, so. Just making sure I didn't miss any questions here. Okay. Dad, since you just passed your 902, I want to give you an opportunity. Would you like to give a recap of the exam? Obviously, you don't have to do what I just did, but just like kind of a brief overview. Is he still here? There he is. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. So is there anything that okay, so you thought the wording on the test questions was a very plain text. Yeah, I agree. That's a CompTIA thing. That's not really a 902 thing. They're just kind of just the way that they're worded. You have to make sure that you kind of learn the language, so to speak. They were wordy. Yes, they are wordy. For the most part, most of the questions are wordy, and they're filled with information that's not really important. So it's really about just kind of keying in on the question and looking for whatever keywords that they give you. Okay. We'll spend too much time on any one question. If you notice that you've been staring at one for over a minute, just flag it and move on to the next. I had to do it a few times. So for performance-based questions. Okay. Sounds similar to my exam, really. Yeah, all the performance-based questions, they come at the beginning on the CompTIA exams. So was there anything there that kind of threw you off, that you felt you weren't prepared for, or none of the resources that you use kind of prepares you for that? Anything that kind of stood out to you? On the rename a PC instead of a home group. Okay. Yeah, see, something like that, that's something you want to make sure that you've done at least a couple times. And then, it won't seem left field. Okay, you're saying it wasn't the standard setup. Rename a PC instead of the home group. It was weird. Felt wrong. Yeah, I can definitely understand that. And that's why I come back to the same point. When you're coming through these objectives, right? Whenever you see given a scenario, install, configure, use, whatever. That's something that you want to make sure that you at least try once or twice. And in an instance like that, when you see it on the exam, it won't seem weird. It will be something that you've done before. If it's something that's brand new, yeah, it will seem weird. For me, they had a question where they wanted me to configure an access point. Okay, I've seen the same question on the 800 series exam. Okay, so it was pretty to the point, right? There was an access point, and they had certain specifications that they wanted for it. So I just had to make sure that I configured it to those specifications. They gave me the SSID, right? They gave me I had the MAC address. They gave me the encryption that they wanted me to use, right? They told me which one to use. They gave me the passphrase, right? They gave me, so all the information was there. I just had to make sure that I configured it to the specifications that they gave me, okay? Now, obviously, this is something that I've done before. Obviously, I have a home network, right? It wasn't my first time setting up an access point or router. So that question didn't throw me off at all. It was like, okay, I've done this before, right? Had that been my first time doing it, I guarantee you I would have got it wrong. I guarantee it, right? Or I mean, I may have been able to get it right, but I wouldn't have felt comfortable. My point is, I wouldn't have felt comfortable doing it. Okay, is this right? You know, is this the right way to do this, or right? I've done it many times before, and so it was just like it's another day at the office, right? It's just doing it again. Versus another question that I haven't done at all, and I couldn't tell you if I got it right or not. I just tried it, and maybe I got it right, maybe I got it wrong. But it's a difference between having experience doing something and doing it for the first time on an exam where it's for all the marbles, right? So you want to make sure that you give yourself whatever experience you can, find a way to do it so that you're not doing it for the first time on the exam. That's kind of what I'm getting at there. But maybe not. Okay. Of course, it wasn't there too much info on that one. Yeah, it's like I said, I'm not going to give it away, but it's if you follow the directions, you'll be fine. So, all right. So we are at our time limit here. So we'll go ahead and end this session here. If there are no more questions, great session, guys. And the next session will be on Friday. We'll be doing NetPlus. Thursday is obviously a holiday, so we won't be doing Security Plus this week.